Good morning again. So I'll be teaching System and Software Standards and Requirements 541. My name there, my phone number, fax. I don't know, we're not using fax anymore. I'll be providing you also a Zoom link to the office hours. So in case you need to talk to me during the office hours, you can visit me actually on campus. We have to be there. Or if you cannot, obviously, if you're in Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, it's difficult to come here. So then you can use Zoom link during my office hours. So my email address is jchoi@edu. So let me go to the, okay. So before I go into the content itself, what is expected in this course, let me give you a brief background so you have some motivation why you want to study this. All right, probably some of you heard the name F.B. Brooks. He is one of the gurus in software engineering. He was a IBM 360 project manager and professor at University of North Carolina. And obviously being a professor and project manager, he has written many papers. There are two papers that stand out, actually, that have been widely publicized. One is called Mythical Man. Probably some of you heard that particular paper. And also, there's No Silver Bullet, Essence and Accidents in Software Engineering. These are really foundational papers that you might want to read. Actually, you should read. You need to read in my class, okay? So basically, he discovered a lot of mistakes, cost overruns, failures in software development, and he tried to write it down. Why would why would be the case, and also what we can do in order to rectify the problem. So, however, in the paper he says following. So the single hardest part of building a software system is deciding precisely what to build, right? So you have to know what to build in order to make correct software. No other part of work so cripples the resulting system if done wrong. Okay? So no other part is more difficult to rectify later. So basically saying, if you don't start well, if the foundation is strong, developing software, whatever you do after that is basically wrong. And once you build it to rectify that later on, obviously it will be tremendous, costly, and difficult to do. So moreover, he said that failure to understand and control the requirements, now we're not talking requirements, right? Requirement is #1 cause of project failure. So if you don't understand exactly what the requirements of software requirements are, and also requirements do change, right? As you know from your industry experience, it changes. Then you need to control it. You don't want to ever get into the requirement, changing things you don't know what's happening, right? And also same thing with, that happened a lot in source code, but also during the requirements phase, you have to do the same thing. So constructing it, controlling it is really important. So it's if you don't do that properly, that's #1 cause of project failure. So to give you the reason is there are two studies, okay? So one is Golden Beaver study that happened a while ago is customer satisfaction rate. So obviously, if you want to be your software be successful, or if your enterprise is supposed to be a good going enterprise, the customer should be satisfied. That's obviously the case. Now, there is a way of constructing good requirements using prototyping that we want to talk about, okay? So that at that time, when they utilized the prototyping versus the other methodology, they found that 33 out of 39 projects, they said their customer is satisfied. So it's really important. So it's about 80% of them said that's a really good project because we utilize certain good requirements methodology, right? And also more importantly, for management's point of view, is a cost overrun, okay? So as you can see, this is a picture that you're going to see probably later on in my class, is that if you look at here, cost here, and basically this one y-axis shows that cost to correct a defect. So that's another study that they have done. So if there is a defect, how much is going to cost to rectify it, correct it, right? So this is the x-axis represents the life cycle. So requirement, specification, design, implementation. These are major milestones in development. Some of you have done this. So the study shows that if you fix the same defect during the requirements phase, it's say normalized to 1, right? Then if you do discover the defect during the specification phase, specification is more you're writing things and trying to model, build a model of your solution. The cost is still reasonable, 1, 2, double, but still reasonable. Now, if you construct it, if you find the same defect during the design phase, that is why you're building architecture and all the detailed design, interface designs, all these things, the cost jumps to 6-fold. Okay, still okay. But if you go to now in implementation, writing code, source code, and real constructing the software, it cost jumps 20-fold, right? Now, if you discover the same defect during the operational phase, typically during the maintenance, it costs like, there's no limit, but it's 60, 70, 80. Some studies show that 200 falls. So this shows that it's really important that we discover defects during the requirements phase and during specification phase. So it shows really why it's really important that we do really well the requirements and control it. Okay, these two pictures show. So first of all, you satisfy your customers, really important, right? And the costs basically will be lower. Then you will be satisfied. Also, your customer will be satisfied. Eventually, you have to pass on to your customer, right? So the cost is lower. That means your customer will be satisfied. So those are two main factors: customer satisfaction in terms of quality, right? It's supposed to what it's supposed to do, and also cost. So these are two important things that you have to have if you do well designed, we call well-formed software requirements. So that's the motivation why we like to have good, well-formed requirements. Okay. So there was a little motivation. So you feel really, why are we doing this? I've never done this before. Why is this so important? So that's a little bit motivation behind it. Okay. So let's talk about learning goals of this course. Again, the way I said it, so initially establishing excellent requirements. So how do we generate or establish, construct a excellent requirements of software system? So we're gonna talk about elaboration, analysis, specification, verification. Those are things, we call it actually requirement engineering now. So we call software engineering. When in software engineering, we call it requirement engineering. These are certain steps you have to go through, get the product, right? That's the engineering process. So we're going to talk about requirement engineering. Okay, so you need to go to certain steps. So in order to generate the real well-formed excellent requirement. So, and then how to manage these requirements, right? So how do we, if there are changes, how do you do that? These are tools existing. So that's what we're going to talk about. And so in the project, so you have to actually construct the excellent requirement. We're not going to talk about really about the management itself, but mostly the generation of excellent requirement. And we'll be using the IEEE software standard in order to construct. Let me see if there's any question. Okay, so construct the requirements. So that will be learning goals. And required textbook is Uyghurs. So third edition to 2013. There is hard copy and a soft copy. So you can get a soft copy from Amazon.com, whatever you buy. It's really cheap, actually. It's like less than $30, $40 compared to other textbooks. It's relatively inexpensive. So there is this is a required book, textbook. It's a little bit long, but it's easy to read. So that you have to have, right? Either hard copy or soft copy. Make sure it's third edition. Second edition is blue, third edition kind of orange color. So you should get that one. And recommended textbook is the IEEE software engineering standards. If I need something, just I make a slice. I make fair use of that particular content. I'll distribute to you. So you don't, although the book itself is cheap, not expensive, you don't have to buy the recommended textbook, but you certainly have the requirement textbook. And also I'll be distributing online materials, papers to read, and other things that I feel important that you should read. So I'll be posting those on Canvas, right? All right, so the coursework, okay, consists of three things. One is exams, obviously, then term project and participation points, all right? So let's talk about initial exams. We have two exams, one midterm and one final. Midterm is 20%, final is 30%, right? So there's no midterm exam. So if you cannot participate, et cetera, then you should let me know. Then the point here is that two things. One is that if you have valid excuse, then the final will have increased weight, that is 50%. And if you do not, then it will you get zero. So we'll try to be more reasonable here. So, and if let me know that what the problem was, then I'll try to if you miss it somehow. Throughout my career here teaching 2004, I have never seen or one or two miss midterms. So not that many, right? So final exam also 30%. So you'll get scheduled from me. By the way, there was a question saying that when we're going to open up the Canvas. I'm going to do it today or tomorrow. I'm going to open it up. I send out an email or announcement saying that it's open now. And the two things you should look at it. One is course syllabus, obviously, and the other one is course schedule. It describes exactly in each week what you have to accomplish, what you have to submit. So those two things you should get it. But I'll send out email today or tomorrow early morning so you have access to Canvas. Right. So those are exams. You again will be using Canvas. There's exam feature Canvas, so I'm going to use that. So I'll talk more about it when time comes. I'll give you a sample exam so you can try it out, how that works. And some of you don't have experience with Canvas, you have more Moodle or whatever. So I'll talk more about the exam. So point here is midterm is 20%, final 30%. All right. So second was term projects. It's group projects. Okay. So as Dr. Lu said that you're going to do a lot of group projects. All right. In my case, 541 is typical size of 3. But let me know if I know other classes that bigger group sizes. So if you let me know, I'll try to adjust. Okay. It's not so typical. I said typical size, but some people want to have less, some people have more. So we can plus minus delta. So let me know if you want to have a bigger group, then I'll look at it. So obviously you cannot have a group size of 10, all right, something like that. But as long as it's reasonable, I'll allow it. So the project is again to write, I give you a problem and then which you call business requirements. Then based on that business requirements, you need to write the SRS documents, software requirement specification documents based on IEEE standard. So I'll give you exact templates, all these things. We're going to talk about that project a little later. Now, I'll accept the late turn-ins, but there will be automatic, so the deadlines you have to meet. So if you're late, there will be deductions, 10% initially. So due date to stay, you miss it somehow, you turn in tomorrow, so there'll be automatic 10% deduction of the total points. Okay, so then 1% each day you're late. So if you're late, for example, if you're late by 1 week or 7 days, the deduction will be 16% of total points. So assuming the total points is 100, the maximum you can get at this point is 84. But it's better to turn in later than not turning at all, obviously. So these are 2 exams and then projects. We'll talk more about the projects as we go along. I'll give you a lot more hints. Lastly, a participation points. All right, so 20%. So this is actually easy way of getting points. There are two parts, part 3A and 3B. One is, I call it chapter summaries. I know some, wow, I'm a grad student, do I have to write chapter summaries? Now, this is individual work that you have to do. So one of the reasons that I like to do is that since I don't see you, I don't know what you're doing. And so again, it's cyberspace. If you don't contact me, I don't know, especially we have like 55, 56 students. So what I like to do is you need to submit, if you read each chapter, you need to submit a chapter summary of the chapter. So again, about 1 or 2 pages per chapter. Okay, sometimes it's less, sometimes chapters are big, sometimes chapters small. So depending on chapter size, you just one page on that. So that's a way of seeing whether you are doing or not doing the work or not, in the sense that whether you are still in or you're totally out. That's one way I can kind of figure out, right? That's more communication medium than actually doing a lot of work. Okay. So 1 or 2 pages, 1.5 line spacing. You can see it's line spacing 1.5 and 11, 12 font size. And you should have basically 2 parts in chapter summary. One is important concept, the content itself. And second part, your ideas, your experiences, your thoughts, what you think about the content itself. So here, part 2 is a way of kind of finding out whether you are reading the chapter and what, you're thinking about the chapter. Okay, so that's a chapter summary. That's a way of more, again, communicating with you. Again, late turning will be accepted, and the same penalty applies, deductions apply when you're late. Okay. The second participation point is discussion board. Okay, so there will be discussion board. I'll talk more about it when I open up the my Canvas website. So you need to basically, your thoughts of the chapter, you need to write that. Okay, it's not just content-wise, but whatever you wrote here, again, in chapter part 2, your idea experience. So those should be here in discuss. You can discuss it. All right. So you should expect at least 2 meaningful postings per chapter. So I divide the whole chapter, entire chapters in different modules. We have 5 modules. So we'll talk more about it. So point here is that that's another way I can communicate with you to see whether you're really participating in the class or not participating. Okay, that's one way I can check it. Right. So make sure that you also post there. Everything has deadlines. Okay. So each board had deadlines, and posting, in this case, posting after deadlines will not be accepted. So no late postings allowed. All right. So that you have to meet exact due dates. Everything has due dates. All right. All right. So again, grading policy is a midterm 20%. Class participation, chapter summary 10, board discussions 10, final exam 30%, and third term project 30%. Okay. So the way I give you the grades is most of you get like A or B's. I have not, they're rarely C's. Okay, rarely. Probably I had like many hundreds of students so far. I had probably 2 or 3 C's. Okay. Anyway, so the way I give, if you're 90% above, you get at least A minus, that meaning A minus assured, but you get usually higher grade. Okay, so the way we can adjust a little bit. So if you have like 90%, you get at least A minus. I could give an A actually, based on whatever happened during the class. And sometimes there are some issues with class, then I basically give A rather than A minus. Okay, so minimum A minus, but usually higher. Okay, so that's the grading scale. So now, in order to succeed in this course, again, I'm going to open up my Canvas website, most likely tomorrow morning or so. So then I send out announcement saying it's open. All right. So if you have time, please log in tomorrow. So what first thing, you get course syllabus, okay, and then and look at course syllabus, see what's in there, okay. So and then course calendar is really important. Again, it describes the week, 16 weeks that you have until final exam. It describes things you have to do in each week. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to put it out or put it somewhere that you can see every day. Say what is due. You know, typically things are due on weekends, so you don't have to worry about submitting things during weekdays. Usually, there are a couple of exceptions, but usually it's due on weekends. All right, so and then these things you should do possibly tomorrow once I open up the website. Course syllabus is important, and course calendar, so you can see kind of an idea of what you have to do, right? And then read prescribed chapters. So I give you what chapters to read, and also turn in the assignments for the week and participate discussion boards, and using the appropriate discussion boards. Okay, and you have the midterm exam and term project and final exam. Important thing is, I know you're busy professionals and you travel time to time, so you need to plan it. Okay, that's really important. Okay, so you need to set a time saying, okay, weekend, Saturday, probably 9 to, or Sunday, whatever your time. This is time that I'm gonna allocate for CS 541, my class, right? So otherwise you'll be behind quickly. So if it's, oh, I'll do it next week, because things are due each week, most likely, then if you don't follow the particular prescribed dates, you'll be behind. Okay, you need to plan, really important, very disciplined. So final notes is that I know some of you have taken online classes before, some have not. So online classes are really different from in-class lectures, okay? So first of all, the way I see it is there's no real face-to-face communication, right? I don't know how you guys are doing. I don't know what's going on because I don't see you. In classroom version, I usually go to the class, I see the student's face, I can kind of notice what's going on, right? Or they didn't understand the concept, or there's something, and then you can raise hand and you can ask questions, you can have discussion. Here we can't, right? So that's different. That's probably the main difference, but some have chosen that because of that, probably some of you do. And also study method is really important. You have to be more disciplined. If you come to the class, you are forced to listen to the lecture and do the assignment. Here, nobody forces you to do anything, right? So you have the more disciplined approach. And lastly, it requires more patience. Sometimes the network may be down, and Canvas, if like 1,000 people trying to go into Canvas or use Canvas, sometimes it may be slow. So have patience sometimes, all right? So then these are three things. This is different from in-classroom version. Make sure that you check your email, CSUF email, not private email. Log in at least like 2 or 3 times a week, or announcements that they will come to your email. If you have any questions, send them an email or use chat on Canvas. I try to respond within 24 hours, okay, window. Usually quicker, but give me 24 hours to respond, all right? During weekdays. Weekends, it may take a little bit longer, but usually turnaround time is 24 or less. Okay, that would be my response time.